Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L, and now let's talk My Hero Academia chapter 155. Oh man, my gosh, man. Guys, so if you follow the channel in the episode reviews and the chapter reviews, you guys know I like chapters or episodes that give me a lot of themes to talk about. Those are my absolute favorite things, the things to speculate on, the things to talk about the cosmology of a series, because that's where the cool factors are when it comes to My Hero Academia. That's where the cool factors are when it comes to talking about these things on YouTube. And this week's chapter is pretty amazing because it's broken up into very distinct parts. Each part has a different message, and the parts, some of them give you more things to contemplate than others, but they're overall all relatively packed. And thankfully, we're not getting pure battle chapters, which is the value of getting all these distinct parts, because pure battle chapters are just kind of a visual spectacle. They are some of the weakest chapters to ever have to talk about unless you really can figure out something going on with the power dynamics, in which case battle chapters can become really interesting, but very few series pull off battle dynamics very well to actually go into like a 10-minute rant about them. That said, My Hero Academia this week, I think, is a pretty good chapter, and it confirms something from last week. So we're going to start with that very quick note there, because there's a few subscribers I need to call out on this one. So this week, we find out specifically what Night Eye saw. He tells us directly, and we know now that that black screen was in fact a future that he did see, but it was artistically rendered out. I talked with a few of you in the comments, and you know, a few of you got it right. I really wish I could have been on that too. I really wish I could have pointed that out as one of the alternatives for what was happening. I wish I could have had those bragging rights, but I didn't. So let's give the bragging rights to the people that deserve it. I will put your name. Well, I'll put your profile pictures on the screen, because there's one name I can't pronounce. So Yuho, Savon, Anthony, and SC Christie. And SC Christie, that was actually pretty funny because you got it, and then the chapter title kind of faked us out there. But SC Christie was also the first one that I saw that had that interpretation. And after I read it, I really wished I could have pointed it out too. Like, it's so simple. It's a simple thing to say, oh yeah, it's also probably a future that the author just doesn't want to show because it's so gruesome. And it's like, yeah, you know, once I get talking about stuff, I get into tunnel vision, and then I just kind of ignore other things other than the alternatives that I talked about. And that's why I really value having you guys there, because you could point things out and get me out of the tunnel vision. But, you know, if there's ever a time to be wrong, it's when you're talking about the things that you enjoy. So, not a big deal. And also, one more comment I forgot to mention you before I went on that little tirade. Rosie 9 Cheeks, you were also mentioning the idea that maybe this is a future that the author just doesn't want to show us, so he actually saw the future. You were on the right track with that one. So round of applause for you guys. You won that one. You got the thing right. As we find out from Night Eye, he is telling us that he saw a very grim future. That said, that's going to be talked about at the end of the video. That's going to be the last topic that we touch on. And then for that one, it's going to be the last topic we touch on, even though it's not the last thing in the chapter, because we need to reference something that Night Eye told us about his quirk and how it works to make full sense of that final conclusion, because that final conclusion is going to determine how exactly or how malleable the My Hero Academia universe is. So we'll talk about that at the end, and for everyone that was interested in that kind of talk about fate and determinism and all that, that's going to be the chunk for you. Anyway, this video, here's how we're going to break it down. We have to talk about Eraserhead first. After that, I think we went into the battle sequence and Ares drama going on. And then we have Meteor's little problems, the Night Eye thing, and then Team Gravity Dragon Frog. There, yeah, Gravity Dragon Frog. So Team Gravity Dragon Frog. And then, let's see. I think those are the main points that I want to hit on for this chapter. I think because it's such a packed chapter, I am sure that I am missing a very small detail. But okay, enough introduction. Let's get into the chapter. So we'll start off by talking with Eraserhead. This was a big deal last week, and I pointed out my concerns with it. And this week is pretty much it's very scary. It's a very scary situation because the thing with the My Hero Academia villains is that if you look at it, the My Hero Academia villains all tend towards hyper competence. The one who's probably the most incompetent among the villains right now is Shigaraki, and that's saying a lot because the boy is, damn it, man. So the thing with the villains is that when you have this precedent set in the series, it makes situations like Aizawa's situation very uncomfortable. This isn't the same as, say, One Piece, where you can expect incompetence from the villains on a regular occasion. Heck, that's how the Straw Hats get out of the majority of their bad situations. You can almost always rely on incompetence to get the Straw Hats out. You can't rely on incompetence in My Hero Academia because, again, Shigaraki is the most incompetent villain by design. He's designed to make mistakes and keep learning. That's a very dangerous type of incompetence. And then across all the other villains that we see, Stain is not incompetent. Even Compress is not incompetent. Even when Compress gets thwarted, he still manages to pull out a victory for the villain side. Shizaki is not incompetent. And now Chronostasis, is the name Chrono? Is that his name? That man is not incompetent. When you have this situation and then you have Aizawa pretty much in their custody, it's scary because now if Shizaki gets away, and as far as I'm concerned, that is a confirmed future. If Shizaki gets away and Aizawa is still in their custody, like this is a terrible situation. Not only is Aizawa being pretty much countered by a very unfair quirk, like Aizawa's useless for the next hour. If Shizaki gets away, Shizaki's hurt a little girl. What is he gonna do to the guy that he kind of pissed him off, right? Like the worst case scenario here is that they take Aizawa away, they hook him up to a chair and they start poking out his eyeballs, hooking them up to little batteries, and then they have flashlights that can somehow cancel quirks. And then of course Shizaki will go and restore the eyeballs every time he plucks them out. That will be absolutely terrible. We do not want to go into that type of situation. That would suck. And it's so, with this situation unfolding now, because of the competence of the villains, it's scary. It's a lot scarier than when, say, Luffy and Nami are stuck in a jail cell. It's way scarier in this situation because the villains have shown they can do really disturbing and disgusting things. So, you know, with the Aizawa segment, if there's ever one thing you have to take away from it is the feeling of futility right now, because this is the worst case for Aizawa. Like, Aizawa's power comes in that he can deal with people without his quirk, but if he's being neutralized with the time quirk, yeah, what is he gonna do? You take away Aizawa's main ability. It's not a nice situation. On the other hand, that's funny. On the other hand, Chronostasis, I think the quirk's pretty cool, and I like that it's, man, like it's cool. It's clever that you have it working with a person's hair. That's so neat. Now I do see that there's 3 arrows on Chronostasis. I do wonder what does that actually mean, because there's only 2 hands on. Oh wait, the seconds. There's the seconds hand, right? So there's 3 hands: the minute, seconds, and hour. The only stipulation that this quirk has is that the person can't move when he's extending his hair. That's not really that bad of a problem. Anyway, the other thing of value that we get during the, I guess, Aizawa's captured sequence is the identity of Eri being that she's the daughter of the boss. Now, that's really important when it comes to kind of painting what's going to happen to Shizaki afterward. If you guys follow the channel, you know I have a theory about Shizaki and Shigaraki. Overall, this is just a nice way to burn the bridge between Shizaki and the boss, because he's got Eri, who is the boss's daughter. You know, that's very disturbing. That is so disturbing that Shizaki's gone past any kind of moral obligations. He's gone past any moral lines. Before this, Shizaki's humanizing characteristic was that he cared about his boss. But now that we're at a point where the man's taken the boss's daughter and is hurting her in the ways that he is doing it, yeah, what can we say about that anymore? Like, no, the guy's a monster. Like, the one bond that he has that makes him human, it's negated. Alright, so now moving into the fight sequence. Okay, so the fight sequence has a lot of rhetoric, has a lot of things being said all over the place, and then it really climaxes on its message, I guess, when Eddie comes back. The fight sequence dialogue isn't all that important. There's nothing that we can really take from that to talk about. It's just a mix of play-by-play versus just some kind of impressive observations that Izuku's making about Shizaki. That being that Shizaki is a very formidable opponent. We knew this already with the introduction of Rappa. Just seeing it here is, you know, it's just reaffirming that point. And then we also have the note about Izuku's fighting style being a lot more straightforward than Midio's fighting style and Night Eye's fighting style. That makes sense because, again, this is the distinction. There are people who are powerful out of the box. They tend to not have technique too much. And then there's the people who need technique to make things work. And Izuku is a first-year student. He's only begun his time at UA. Midio is a third year. It makes sense that he'd be more skilled. So that point isn't really that incredible when you think about it, but it might be a point that people are going to jump on when they start saying that Midio is significantly better than Izuku. Like, you have to remember, Midio has 2 years of experience on Izuku. He has to be better than Izuku. That's just the logic of time. That said, there is one note about this kind of fight sequence, is that if you look at the panels as we're going through it, background is usually really important because the background gives you a pretty clear sense of where the characters are in relation to each other. The problem here is that because Shizaki, because Shizaki keeps messing with the background, and that, I mean the debris that's on the floor, it's kind of hard to tell where exactly Izuku is in comparison to Shizaki. And it makes it even worse because the fight itself is a combination of Izuku moving around Shizaki and Shizaki moving the terrain around Izuku. When you have that kind of thing happening, it's just kind of harder to keep track of where the characters are in relation to everything else. These type of fight sequences are the kind of fight sequences that need to be animated, because in the animation you have all the things moving. You know where all the rocks are moving. You can see all the debris flying around. You can see where Izuku is. It's because, you know, it's a fight sequence that has so many moving parts. These are the types that we need to have animated, and when they do get animated, you can expect it's going to be a visual masterpiece. Especially this one. Like, man, Shizaki's whole fighting style revolves around him grabbing pieces of debris to be able to attack Izuku properly. That kind of thing is just, you need to see it in motion. But this is just an interesting note. There are some fight sequences that do better in manga style, and those are the type of fight sequences that need the abruptness that the panels give by nature. This is not one of those. So I just thought that would be an interesting point to have in this chapter. Overall though, like, it's a very simple fight. It's just Izuku jumping around and Shizaki countering him and throwing stones at him. Like, it's not gonna take home any awards, and especially because there's so much chaos in the fight scene itself, it's not the nicest to read. That said, if you're a manga veteran, then you can probably follow these type of scenes relatively well. But yeah, that's just my personal thoughts. Moving on, we could take time to talk about Eri's rhetoric in this one, but it's not anything that we haven't seen before. It's really just her trying to make things better, and then Shizaki just going in and trying to break down the heroes. The worst thing in this part is that Midio finally couldn't keep going. His spirit had finally just run out, and really, like, the guy tried his best, but you know this is gonna haunt him. This is gonna be the moment he failed, the moment that he hit the ground on his knees and he couldn't move anymore. That's it. It was over for him. He's gonna have a really bad character arc. It's gonna be pretty terrible for him. But anywho, moving on with the Eri segment, it is pretty creepy how Shizaki has the mouth on his hand. You know, it's not so bad because we've seen Shoji do it before, but it's just a very creepy little situation, and it does make the whole situation a lot more unsettling. That said, you know, you have that thing from Shizaki, or the mouth on Shizaki's hand, talking about how it needed to die again and all that stuff. Like, there's a lot going on in that, but it's really just made to make everyone that tried to help Eri feel bad, and to make Eri feel like she's the worst person in the world, even though that's not what she is. If anything, props to Shizaki for being able to manipulate people to that degree, because like that, he's really committing to the rhetoric. Eri is the reason everything's going wrong. Anywho, now we're quickly approaching the parts that I really want to talk about, but right before that, let's talk about the people that jump in. Team Dragon Gravity Frog. So, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I kept thinking that I want to see Tsuyu and Ochako eventually. You know, I thought, you know, maybe we'll get to see them in passing. And then over the weeks, as we get more and more caught up with Medio, it's like, all right, I'm forgetting about them. And so it's really cool when the people that come in are that team, like they're actually gonna get something to do. Because here's what I thought. Given the precedent that we have with the Ochako-Tsuyu pair, I thought we were just gonna have them doing the little thing like back in the camp arc where they were just going into the woods and then they run into Toga. I thought that's what we were gonna get, like they weren't gonna really do much. But then when you think about the camp arc, it's like, no, they started it off and then they had their moment towards the climax. So he's following the pattern here. He has them do something at the beginning. I'm specifically talking about Tsuyu and Ochako. He has them do something at the beginning of the arc, and then towards the climax, as we're getting closer and closer to the climax of the arc, he brings them back in. That's how the structure with Toga happened. He brought them back in, and then they met up with Izuku, and then they helped Izuku out with his thing. So, you know, it's a bit of a pattern that he has set up with the girls. That said, I'm very happy to see them here. I want to see what the two of them can do. Right now, Tsuyu and Ochako are both very combat incapable people. Wait, not combat incapable, combat incompatible. I want to see what they can do to make combat work for these two characters. So, man, anytime that I can see them together or see them doing stuff, I'll be pretty happy. So their entrance is pretty amazing. That said, both characters that came in, not counting the dragon, they don't have quirks that can very quickly help Izuku. So it's going to be pretty neat to see what's going to happen there. Because like, usually the people that have the weak powers are the ones that are more interesting to watch. So I want to see what's going to happen. I'm pretty excited. So we'll have to see for next week what's going to go down there. But now we're going to talk about Night Eye's segment. Because in this chapter, Night Eye specifically says, I saw it, the future in which both you and I will be killed and Shizaki will escape. Alright, so that's a big problem, right? Because we all know Izuku's not going to die. So here's the assumption that I'm going to go in. I know that a few of you might go with the route that fate can be changed by Izuku. I don't want to embrace that thought, not because I don't like it, but more because I can't embrace that until I have enough reasons to justify why it would happen. Because the precedent has been set that Night Eye can't change the future that he sees. And he even added that it feels like whenever he does try to change it, all he did is delay it. Because you have that precedent set, and he is the best authority on that right now because he's the only character that can influence the future or see the future to some degree. I don't want to embrace the thought, yes, Izuku can bend the future. So this next little bit is all based on that assumption. If you do not agree with that assumption, then automatically you do not agree with what I'm about to say, and that's cool. Like, but just know that's the base of the assumption. So we're going to go back to chapter 136 and we're going to look at this one panel. It's where Night Eye was explaining how he sees the future. So I'll just read it out. It plays in my head frame by frame like a flashback. Think of it like this, for 1 hour after I activate it, I am able to watch the entire film of the target person's life. And this is the very important part. However, the entire film's point of view is from somewhere immediately near them. Ultimately, I can only see the person's movements and a small amount of the surrounding environment. What this ultimately means is that if we take it back to the Shizaki situation, we have to ask, how did he see the future? And if I was to go with my most pragmatic approach for this one, I'm thinking that he's only looked at Shizaki. First, we have to make the assumption he's only looked at Shizaki. He hasn't looked at Izuku. That's the first fundamental assumption. And it can be supported depending on how you argue the chapter, although you could say he could have looked at Izuku at any given point in the thing. And yeah, I would say you're correct, but that we have to be careful with that assumption. So dealing with this, the assumption is he's only looked at Shizaki. that means that he can only really see the things around Shizaki. So unless he saw Shizaki specifically beheading characters, can he actually say that Izuku and him will be killed? Because right now, Night Eye is skewered on some rocks. If Night Eye was looking at Shizaki's future and he saw it from a viewpoint that had his body skewered on some rocks or his body just thrown about with holes in it, like, any sane person would look at that scene and say, yeah, that guy's dead, right? If he saw Izuku beaten on the ground, covered in blood, like blood leaking out of him, like I'm talking a giant puddle of blood, anyone that sees that situation would say, yeah, that guy's probably dead. Like, there's not going to be a situation where I think Shizaki goes up to a character and is checking their pulse and is actually saying that they're dead. Because of that, we have to believe in the unreliable narrator here. This assumption only works with the unreliable narrator. You have to take it that Night Eye is interpreting his scene wrong. That's the way that, well, that's the only way that I can right now rationalize having a situation where the thing that Night Eye saw still happens, but have the conclusion that Night Eye derives from it be false. It's simply because the focal point is centered around Shizaki, he doesn't have the exact details on the other people. But then that goes into the other thing. He sees that Shizaki gets away. That's very important because that's probably going to happen. So overall, my perspective on the whole future thing is that I don't think the future can be changed, but I don't think Izuku will be killed. Like, Izuku in particular is the poster boy for hurting himself and also the poster boy for disfiguring injuries. I really believe Izuku would probably just disfigure himself before he would die. So because of that, I could very easily see a situation where where Night Eye saw Izuku get skewered and it sees him like lying in a puddle of blood somewhere on the floor, and just called that, yeah, Izuku's dead, right? Because we didn't get to see the future that Night Eye saw, a lot of doubt is in play here, because maybe it's the type of panel, like if we saw the film that Night Eye saw, maybe the more observant viewers would be able to point out details that say, no, the characters aren't dead, right? That might be the real reason why we're not getting shown the screen. Like, Night Eye the author wants to maintain the illusion. The author doesn't want to give us any clues to how they could get around the prediction. But yeah, that's my overall thoughts on that bit. It's Night Eye saw something, but because of the way that his quirk works, there's a good possibility that he did not get the accurate conclusion. That said, he also didn't see the giant dragon walking in here, but that could also be explained by how he sees the future. Now, again, like, the concerning parts here are that he saw that Shizaki escapes, and he did see a bit where Eri is not taken into protection. So does that mean he saw Shizaki and Eri standing together in the future, like a very distant future? In which case, that sucks. Oh Jesus. And then that also opens up the thing for Aizawa. Aizawa is still in danger. Aizawa is, it's not a good situation. It's a very uncomfortable situation overall. We're getting to the end of the video. Now that I'm closing it up here, what I'm really hoping for, like the Aizawa situation, I want it to be neutralized. Maybe Toga, maybe Twice will pop in. I'm really hoping for Fat Gum and Kirishima. Like, if there's ever going to be a time for those boys to come in, it's going to be now. And on the other bit, Shizaki continues to be a very, very terrifying villain, and Izuku is too simple. Well, I think that's the end of it for me. Overall, I am very excited. I love that we're getting Tsuyu and Ochako back into the game, but I really want to deal with Shizaki. I really hope that the tides will turn enough here, and I do want to see how the author is going to play up the future thing. I have no problem if people can bend the future, but I want it to be reasonable. And right now I'm still on the track of thought that the future can't be changed, but people's interpretation of the future might be wrong. Anywho, guys, thanks for watching. Till next time, I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you in the comments. If you guys have anything you disagree with, let me know and I will be there to talk it out with you.